Hello, everyone. My name is Mac Friday. This is Sam Kirk. Welcome into the week two edition of the Yuma County High School Football Podcast. We're so excited to be back with you guys this week. Finally, have something to talk about with a full slate of everybody and 8 teams playing last Friday. Sam, I'm sure you had a good time out and about. I know I did. How was your Friday night?
Yeah, I know you were staying in the county. I was actually out in the Imperial Valley area, but a lot of action Friday night, some mixed results, like we said, some good things, some bad things. But overall, I think, we kind of saw again mostly what we expected. Some surprises, our picks weren't perfect, but I think for the most part, kind of expected what we saw here last Friday, like you said.
Definitely. I think today is a good way for us to start out with our power rankings, kind of just see how everything stood out last week or compared to last week. Last week, just to recap, our power rankings were Yuma Catholic at one, Gila Ridge at two, Cibola at three, Antelope at four, Yuma High at five, Summerton at six, San Pasqual at seven, Kofa at eight. And we do have a little bit of changes in that after Friday's results. YC, Gila Ridge, Cibola, that's still the same of one, two, three. But despite a Yuma High loss to Choya, I think the Criminals showed enough to be able to move up on that list. We have them at four over Antelope at five, who had a rough showing against Glendale Prep. Kofa, despite a loss, moves up the rankings two spots over SP and Summerton. Kofa at six, SP, despite a win, still probably not as promising or as loaded as an opportunity with Kofa with some of the schools that they're playing. That's just a discrepancy of the school size. And then Summerton had a welcome to high school football kind of moment, getting knocked down by Copper Canyon, moving them down to the bottom of the power rankings. So there's one through eight for you. We'll go through each game, Sam, and if you want to kick things off, we'll start at the top of the schedule with Antelope and Glendale. Not a pretty one out in Glendale, but still a lot to learn for these Rams.
Yeah, no doubt. And, after what me and you both saw and, last week in their first opening game, we were pretty excited to get what we saw, but a tougher opponent in week two, having to travel on the road again. It's tough because I know this team isn't necessarily as deep as I think they want to be in terms of having a lot of weapons and a lot of options. And, watching that week one victory, you kind of saw Ozzy get beat up a little bit. So you wonder if, they put a lot of their eggs in that basket to come out with that week one victory, coming away with a, victory in a tough, kind of close game at the end as well. So I think it might have been a little big, too big of a moment for them last week in terms of just what we are expecting. But to get shut out, I mean, it's a little disappointing. Hopefully, they're able to rebound this week on Friday.
Yeah, 49 nothing the final score over in Glendale. I think personally it was a challenge of going on the road and facing a little bit of a different scheme because we saw that three back set that Mountainside was running didn't really pass the ball at all. Meanwhile, the Griffins spreading the ball out from a pistol and also the gun, just like getting the ball out, getting it to the edge. Antelope was getting killed on the edge. And just they ran outside on them all night, over 200 rushing yards on the ground from two or three separate rushers. And the Rams conceded five total scores through the air. So Antelope looks to rebound against Veritas Prep this week at home. But moving down our list, we have a rare Thursday game, Sam. Cibola versus Glendale. And Cibola, really the pleasant surprise of last week's slate, I would personally say.
I don't think you're wrong in saying that. I mean, they put up a crap ton of points, and I think that was a big thing for them to be able to do. We talked about this team losing a ton of their returning rushers, receivers, a lot of weapons in all reality, Mac. And, it was impressive to see what they were able to put up on the scoreboard. Again, this Friday, I think me and you are both going to say this is going to be a lot tougher of a matchup, being that we just saw what happened with Antelope when they had to face the same exact Glendale team. So, it's a little bit worrisome in terms of this matchup for those Raiders. But, if they're able to ride some of that momentum into this game, I'm hoping they can kind of keep this thing close. But I think it might be a little bit too much of a ask really to for them to win this game here on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit of a different route. I think this is actually going to be another win for the Raiders. We'll get to that in our picks, but I mean, five separate rushers go for a touchdown for the Raiders. And, facing off against a big public school in Glendale who's struggled the past couple of years, the Cardinals have. And so it's a matter of can they continue to be successful against another big public school like they were against Rincon? Caleb Gillespie, head coach, is really trying to change this football culture and get the school to buy in. So a rare Thursday opportunity for that to happen. Cibola really rode the hot hand of Daniel Sainz, who was our player of the week, rushed for 200 yards and a touchdown, had two interceptions on defense with a pick six. That rushing attack looked really great. Really looking forward to the opportunity to actually seeing them play and seeing how things go this next coming week. Um, Moving down the line, Gila Ridge makes their home debut this week. Not the prettiest of games from a total sense last week at NAU against Lake Havasu. Isaac Solis had a little bit of a difficult game, and that defense really showed out, and it was kind of an unfortunate matchup with that, not able to finish the job necessarily against Lake Havasu.
Yeah, pretty much hit the nail on the head. I actually was doing my preview breakdown of Gila Ridge yesterday, so I was out of practice talking with Jessica and their team. Obviously, like Max said, not what they wanted in week one against Lake Havasu. And, it was kind of a mixed bag performance. That's what I was at least told. Offensively, I think it really wasn't what they wanted to be. We talked about Isaac struggling a little bit, but I think that was expected. You know what I mean? This is a large returning team. A lot of these guys have played for this team for many years now, and they're coming back with a lot of veteran guys and a lot of returning starters besides Isaac. So for him to go into week one playing at NAU, playing Lake Havasu, it's a big time moment for him. And for him to be able to thrive in that game, I think was kind of unfair to really expect that. You brought up him struggling, turning the ball over four times. He went 17 of 34 too for his completions and attempts. So again, having to throw the ball a ton. Maybe they're able to get back to their run game a little bit more heading into this week. And I think that was what the coaching staff kind of was implying to me in terms of what they want to do. And again, tons of weapons on that team, Mac. You talk about Coda, you talk about Kanai. Like this team has a ton of guys that are really shifty with the football and two explosive running backs that I really like as well. I think they have a chance to, be good on offense. And even though with that game in the start or having a rough start against Lake Havasu, I still have high hopes for this team. And I'm really excited to see again what Prentice Box can I do, Gabriel Coda does on the outside at receiver, but overall should be a really fun year. And this team still has goals and wants to go 9-1, has big aspirations for this year. So I think maybe, sometimes those struggles are needed in those games, and maybe that's going to fire them up and get them even more ready for this week.
Yeah, and we would be remiss not to mention the Gila Ridge defense, which honestly, in my opinion, was probably the one side of the ball that really deserves some attention this week. I mean, multiple guys with big time games. Drew Caudill with two sacks, Brady Doman with multiple tackles and a tackle for loss. Daughtry Phillips had an excellent game across the board. I mean, just a really successful performance for this group. And it's unfortunate that they weren't able to really hang on across all sorts of the entire contest. But I think you're going to see some really big things from this group this year.
Yeah, I agree, Mac. And like you said, that defense played well on Friday. I think they're as confident as it gets. And I think that it's just kind of up the offense. If they're able to score and, take care of the football, we'll see on Friday night. But if that's the case, I think Gila Ridge, again, has a chance to be really good.
Couldn't agree more. Moving down the list, we have Kofa. Not a ton of information on how things went against Maryvale. We do have the score, which is 34-21, and I know that the Kings were absolutely torched by a specific Maryvale player. I don't know his name, but I know that it was a rough performance for them in terms of stopping that guy. But still, three scores on the board for a team that's really young and really inexperienced and is still learning their way through high school football. This is one of those schools that has a lot of kids who come in who haven't played a ton of football before. And so one of the challenging jobs for Austin Browning is getting all these guys on the same page and getting them to buy in and be a collective program. And so A tough game against Maryville nonetheless, but still, I think this is the season where they get that long-awaited win, finally get that proverbial losing monkey off their back. And even if it is a loss in week one, it's still an opportunity to grow and learn and get some game speed opportunities and see some film. So I don't think this is necessarily the worst kind of outcome that you could expect from Kofa in week one.
No, I think you're exactly right. And you look at their box score, I mean, they're able to score in every quarter outside that first quarter. So started slow, but really kept things going and made it somewhat competitive in, again, in that third quarter, being down just two scores, and they only lost by 13 again. So I think statistically and what they did on the road, if you look at some of these numbers here, they're able to run a ton of plays. They had almost the same amount of first downs as Maryville had during that game as well. So Mac, I was a little skeptical when you were being, hey, this might be the year they're able to get that win. But after what we saw, or at least what we think we saw, them keeping it close against Maryville, I think they'll have quality opportunities against lesser opponents this season to maybe, finally, like you said, get that monkey off their back. Obviously, they almost allowed 400 yards to one rusher. So that's, something that needs to be cleaned up. You're going to need to really get better in that run defense. But overall, I think they should be about as happy as they can be after a performance like that. And I think the Kings might even have some momentum now heading into the rest of their schedule, especially against these local opponents.
Definitely. And I think that the this Kofa team, what really is important going into these next couple weeks is continuity. We saw last year they came out against Fountain Hills and scored 48 points and lost by a touchdown, and then barely scored 48 the rest of the year, besides a game against Antelope that they lost in overtime. So I think the most important key for these next 1, 2, 3 weeks is continue to have success on offense, no matter what that scoreboard looks like. And so as long as that carries over across the next couple games, I think that this shows promise for Kofa. Um, Moving on to our next game, we have San Pasqual at Kingman Academy, a rare Saturday game. And I think this, looking at Kingman, I think this could actually be a decent matchup for the Warriors. The Kingman Academy Tigers have played two teams, Desert Star, and then of course the main school in Kingman, the Bulldogs, and lost both of those by 3, 4 scores. And San Pasqual played against Kingman in their scrimmage, the main school, the Bulldogs in Kingman, and while they did give up 3 touchdowns on their first three offensive possessions to the Bulldogs did score those. I still think that they did manage to get their defense together. And if, Kingman High School is beating up on Kingman Academy and also beating up on SP in a similar way, then maybe that bodes well for a similar matchup between these two schools. And then, we saw a lot of great things from the Warriors in a bounce back week. I'll let you talk a little bit about that, Sam.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think we were both kind of not upset, but a little disappointed in week one, where I think we both thought they had a really good opportunity to have a Bourgade Catholic team and potentially, start 2-0 if they were able to do that. This could be a potentially a 3-0 team if they were able to win this week. So, still a really good opportunity at hand for San Pasquale to do something that they haven't done in, decades and decades now, to just be close to 500, have a winning record. And, that starts again this Friday. If they're able to get over the hump, make this thing competitive, what you brought up, they had a very, busy offseason. They were doing a lot, staying active. And part of that was those scrimmages. And like you said, if they're able to keep up with Kingman there, you're assuming that these two teams are probably pretty evenly matched. And I would, say the Warriors might have an advantage here down or just a little bit in terms of having Martinez and Alex Acuna, who is our KYMA player of the week. He had ran for 20 times, 205 yards last week. I mean, this team has weapons. Like Max said, a lot of our programs, unfortunately, don't have a lot of experience playing football, and that's definitely how I would describe the Warriors. But on a talent perspective, they definitely can, or some of their guys can keep up with, pretty much anyone.
For sure. And if Alfred Cornejo returns this week or in the coming weeks, that just bodes even more beneficial for this team. And like you said, Alex Cunha, just a monster performance. When we were going through our previews and our initial podcast, we talked about who's going to step up and be that playmaker when Isaiah Martinez is double, triple teamed. And it looks like it's going to be Alex Acuna running the ball. And San Pasquale, they may not have the most skilled players in the world, but they have size. And their line's big. And if their linemen can get their technique down and continue to improve, they could really run the ball seriously at this 2A level for big time yards.
No, exactly. And we're pulling for those Warriors and we like what we see thus far. 1-1, I know, is a better start than they've had in years past. And I know they're excited to kind of see the rest of the schedule entails. Still have some really big time games here, Mac, though.
Definitely. Moving down our list, we have Somerton versus Calexico on Friday at Cibola because they are still working on that track at Somerton High School. So the home opener is going to have to wait till next week. Like we said a little bit earlier, really just a welcome to high school football kind of night for the Toros. Copper Canyon goes 48 nothing. Junior Atherton, head coach, has to learn some things, has to educate his guys a little bit. I mean, this is a team that, kind of deer in headlights in their first opportunity against another varsity squad. And so I don't think that gets any easier this week, but it's a matter of how can you learn things from this film, get the guys as ready as they can possibly be, and just try and improve. First thing would be probably get in the end zone a little bit, see if we can get some offensive production going. And then besides that, see if you can make some stops on defense. I think the Toros have some promising games later down the schedule, but this is another opportunity to learn against Calexico.
Yeah, no, and I think this season's going to be more about this team working on certain things during these games and, just improving game after game. That's going to be the bottom line for Somerton. Cyril Atherton is the most football guy you almost meet in Yuma County, and he's going to get this thing right eventually. And I genuinely think that he has the right idea and the right me and you talk about his enthusiasm even after some of these games. Like that's not an easy thing to do, and for him to talk about his team that way and to take positives away from games like this, still, that's what is important for this program, especially in year one of varsity football. Us covering the Imperial Valley, I'll give you a quick look on what Calexico is. Last year
Yes,
they went
please.
six.
I was looking forward to this part of,
Yeah, last year they went 6-4. They were down to their third string quarterback at one point, but this is a really deep team. This is a competitive team, the Imperial Valley League. Not one of the best, but always give a lot of opponents a run for their money, and they're really scrappy. They're going to play hard and be very physical. So, in all, Mac, like we said, I don't think it gets really any easier for the Toros this week. It's probably going to be another rough showing, but for them to maybe get on the scoreboard this week or just to keep Calexico maybe at 30, 35 points, I think would be a big win for a program that's, again, trying to just take tiny steps in order to set them up for future success.
Definitely. And while we focus on Yuma County sports in this podcast, specifically in Yuma County football, Sam does have a lot of expertise with the Valley, with his beat, with KYMA over next door. So we are pretty much grateful that we do get the opportunity to talk about three California teams this week, along with our Yuma coverage. And that continues with Yuma High versus Palo Verde Valley at Curly Colt Memorial this weekend and on Friday. The Criminals lost 21-6 to Choya in their season debut. And it was pretty interesting of a contest, I will say, Sam. Choya comes out and absolutely runs the ball down Yuma High's throat. And then right when they're, kind of red zone territory, a little bit further beyond, they start throwing it and start giving this Yuma High defense opportunities to make stops. And they do. And so it was a little bit confusing that they didn't continue the run because they were really struggling to stop that, the Criminals were. But I saw a lot of great things from this Yuma High team, even if they struggled on offense. I mean, their first offensive possession was not great. It went sack, fumble, recovered for a touchdown. So pretty much, I mean, I talked to Armando Mosqueda after the game. He said we didn't have a scrimmage, so that first half was pretty much our scrimmage, and they improved in the second half. They did finally get in the end zone at the end of the game. Um, and one of the really interesting things, Sam, that they made in this game, one of the changes was putting Kane Huerta Herbalejo, who started the game at quarterback, at tailback, and then putting in Jaden Frank, their backup quarterback, to sling it, hand it off to Kane, and Kane first snap comes down the line, breaks it outside, and absolutely cracks a Choya defender down the sideline. Pretty special play right there, and showed that maybe this was the right move. And then Frank connects down with Elijah Rattler towards the end of the game for a touchdown, and kind of a promising turn of events there for Yuma High.
Yeah. And you talked about, Choya deciding to throw the ball a little bit more, and that's kind of what led Yuma back in this ball game. Their opponent this week, Palo Verde, is probably going to throw this thing maybe one or two times all game long. It's going to be a very basic offense. They're going to pound the rock. They have a really talented back in Kenneth Salazar. And Yuma's going to have to focus on stopping the run. There's going to have to be their main goal heading this week. They have the size to do it, too. I think these are two very similar teams and where they're matching up county-wise. Palo Verde's in a very similar spot. They're getting their head coach back this year, Wally Grant, longtime coach who had cancer last 2 seasons. So he's finally back. So they're getting that momentum, getting their culture reestablished a little bit over there as well. So I think this is going to be a fairly competitive game. I know the Yellow Jackets at 0-2 right now. They're going to be hungry for that win. But like you said, Mac, we saw a better second half from Yuma and them figuring out a couple of those things with Kane and moving him in that backfield, I think, can go a long way. And this team, again, has some scrappy players. They have some size. And if you're able to, figure out some things that work in the run game like that, I generally think this will be a close one on Friday.
Like you said with size, I was actually really impressed with the Yuma lines, the both offense and defense, specifically that defensive line. I think there's a lot of promise with this group. They got a nose tackle in Las Morales, who is a big boy and can absolutely move with deceptive speed for his size. And he had a sack against the Choya quarterback, which was great. Guys like David Argomanis, if they can stay healthy and not cramp up like they did in this first week, which is, of course, first week, just game speed, readjusting, getting hydrated, making sure you're keeping your fluids in. And they rotate out a lot of guys. I mean, there were probably 6, 7, 8 different guys along the defensive line that were getting reps. Maybe 6, 7, 8 guys on the offensive line, not as many probably as the defensive line, but still really good rotation from the groups, and I saw a lot of great things from that defensive front. So Armando even said if we can get this group going, we could really stop some offenses at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, that was something I noticed almost right away when watching their practice. Again, big up front. They have the size to be able to compete. It's going to be more about putting those guys in the right spots to be able to succeed. We talked about the Criminals, a little bit of a wild card this year. Hoping for the best. Should be a good matchup this week against Palo Verde.
And then finally, wrapping out our schedule, another good one. In my opinion, Yuma County's best versus one of Imperial County's best. Yuma Catholic gets their home opener against Holtville. And this is going to be a rebound opportunity for the Shamrocks. After a disappointing 28-14 loss at Notre Dame Prep, I don't think it was necessarily a lack of talent that held the Shamrocks back. I think it was just a little bit of a lack of execution. Nash Ott still kind of acclimating with this new group of receivers. He doesn't have Surf Stokes. He doesn't have Daryl Coleman. He doesn't have Hunter Hancock anymore. And so it's guys like Brody Amon, Wesley Porter, who was his number one receiver that day. Um, it's about acclimating. And this defense didn't get a ton of stops against Notre Dame Prep, but they did get stops when it mattered and gave the offense an opportunity to get the ball and go drive and potentially go ahead. And it was heartbreaking almost for the Shamrocks watching this stream to see how close they got because they could have taken the lead in the third quarter and were stuffed at the 2. And then they had an opportunity from around 35, 40 yards out in the waning moments to take the lead and just couldn't also do that again. So I think it's about execution this week. And if Catholic can execute, this should be a really, really good game, Sam. And I'm sure you can speak to Holtville's talent as well.
Yeah, no, I think you hit most of the parts I wanted to on YC. Obviously, a tough loss, and just to be in so many of those situations where if one thing could have went one way or the other, they're probably in that game till the very end and potentially win it. But as you're looking at this matchup, YC's schedule to start the year is no joke, and it doesn't really get any easier right now. I know Hopeville is a lesser opponent than what Notre Dame Prep is, but I would not underestimate the Vikings, and I can guarantee you that Vernon Smith and the Shamrocks are not doing that either. They know what this team's about, and they're a heavy run team, Mac. They're gonna throw the ball a little bit. They got a senior quarterback who's going to be smart. He's not going to turn the ball over, but their team really goes through Enrique Armas, their running back. He's an absolute beast. He runs for about 150 yards a game, always scores about 2 touchdowns. Like he's your guy, and he's the Vikings guy. They've had a pretty good start to their season. They won 44-19, their opener, but in that last week's game, they played a really good Mission Bay team. They also were able to keep it close with them as well. So again, Hopeville's not unfamiliar to really these tough opponents that YC is very familiar to like. So I think this is going to be maybe our game of the week here. One of the barn burners should be a close one. We'll get to our predictions very shortly, but one of the main concerns I have is that Hopeville's size and strength I think might hurt because I think the biggest weakness of YC is their size up front in the D line and O line this year compared to years past. And Holtfield's going to really just try to run it down YC's throat. That's going to be their game plan, and that's how they're going to try to go at this team. And I think it has the makings of a really great game on Friday, Mac. I think we both might be there, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think this depends a lot on, like you said, the Yuma Catholic defensive front. Um, Sean Carter is going to need to have another 15 plus tackle game and really dominate the box. And this defensive line is going to have to step up and penetrate that line of scrimmage and hold it. I think this is probably also my game of the week. And I will be there at least for the second half because it's going to be bouncing around a little bit this Friday. But really looking forward to this one. I appreciate the fact that you have Holtville knowledge and have kind of been educating both us on the podcast and me in our private conversations as well to what this thing is going to look like. This is, like you said, no slouch of a 3 game opener for the Shamrocks. Notre Dame Prep did not go the way they wanted. This needs to be one that they want to go their way because it certainly does not get any easier next week. Arguably, probably the toughest game on their schedule when the Marana Tigers come to town. So moving into our picks, I want to start with Thursday, Cibola versus Glendale High School, Raiders and Cardinals. Glendale 2-8 last year, Cibola also 2-8. I think this is an opportunity for the Raiders to be able to build off of their success from last week and continue to try and shift this football culture, beat another big public school, and see what they can ride for the rest of the season. I'm going to go Cibola winning this one in a dogfight. Let's go 14-12.
And like you said, the Cardinals, Glendale have struggled in the past couple of years. Cibola coming in high off that momentum. Two very similar teams, though, in their last couple of years, too, as well. We got to remember that the Raiders have struggled in years past. But from what we saw last week, I think I'm expecting another win here, too. I think Cibola rides high into week 2, winning this game. I'll go 30-10.
Okay, big dominant win for the Raiders. I like it. All right. Now moving to Friday, starting out on our Friday schedule, Antelope versus Veritas Prep. I think this is going to be more of the same from last week, unfortunately. As much as we like Alfonso Brown and his team, I think when it comes to this first half of the 2A schedule, they're a little bit outmatched. Veritas 2-0 thus far this season. I'm going to go looking like a 35-14 loss for the Rams.
Yeah, and like you said, Veritas in 2 games, 2 wins, holding 2 opponents under 15 points both times. I don't know how well that's going to bode for the Rams offense, especially a younger group. Really kind of doesn't have too many weapons in terms of their outside receivers. Kevin Ugogian and Ozzie Martin do a great job, but they're going to only be able to do so much in this ball game. I'm going to have Antelope losing, unfortunately, in this one quite convincingly. I'll go 28-7.
Moving on, we got Gila Ridge hosting Greenway, and Greenway 3-7 last year. Gila Ridge 5-5. I would say these are pretty similar teams. Gila Ridge lost to Flagstaff while Greenway beat them last year. I think this is going to be probably a win for Gila Ridge. They get some confidence back on the board after a tough week one game against Lake Havasu. I'm gonna go Gila Ridge with the dub, 21-17. Flip the score from this past week.
Yeah,
Nothing amazing that, but close enough.
I'm with you here, Mac. I think this is a good spot for Gila Ridge. And to be honest, we talked about it being a really important spot for YC and almost a must win this week. I think it's almost the same for Gila Ridge in a way where this is kind of a spot they can't afford to slip up on, especially after what happened last week. And I think that's the vibe I'm getting from their team as well to get to 1-1 here and try to reset. I think they're ready to do so. And this is a talented team. And I think last week, especially some of the things on the defensive side, are going to really allow them to be successful this week. So I'm going Gila Ridge wins this one. Let's say a little less scoring, maybe like a 21-7 type of ball game. Defense
Okay.
really controls thing. They get in the end zone a few times, but pretty defensive battle.
Yeah, definitely. You're giving that Gila Ridge defense a little more credit than I probably should have with that prediction, but we'll roll with it. Kofa at La Jolla Community. Um, La Jolla Community is a 4A school, and Kofa really struggled in 3A last year. Gila Ridge did beat La Jolla 35-14 last year, which I do think bodes well for the Kings in this game. But I think this is another one where they're gonna struggle, probably get in the end zone a couple times, but still lose out. Probably in a similar score to last week. I'm probably going to go 35-21 again. I think this is going to be a similar score and just a kind of similar game. They just have to make sure that they don't let one player beat them like they did with Maryvale.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you in terms of predictions. I think it's going to be a little closer. Maybe I'd go 22-13, sometime, something along those lines. I think this Kings team is going to gradually keep making these games closer, eventually leading up to hopefully that first win.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what that looks like. Next up, we have Somerton versus Calexico. I think this is probably going to be the most lopsided game of the week, unfortunately, for the Toros. I'm going to go 45-7 Calexico.
Yeah, that's a fair prediction. Yeah, 45-7 sounds about right. I would maybe go a little bit less. Maybe Somerton holds them about 35 points here. I think Calexico maybe will die things down a little bit in the second half, but hoping the Toros hold on a little bit, make things competitive there on Friday.
And based off your analysis with Yuma High and Palo Verde Valley, I'm still going to go with the Criminals to win this one, but I don't think it was going to be as lopsided as I initially intended with how they handled the Choya run. And you mentioned that this is a really running based offense for Palo Verde. I'm going to say this is a slugfest. I'm talking 14-7, something like that. Just dirty ground game. Curly Culp's gonna be just chopped up, looking like you took a golf club to it. So I'm gonna go with 14-7 Criminals.
I'll do kind of a reverse there. 15-7 Vikings. I think the Crims have a chance at the end, and I think they just can't punch it in to tie it up. But I think it'll be a really competitive game. Two very similar teams.
And then we go to what we have both agreed is probably the game of the week. Catholic versus Holtville at Ricky Gwen. I'm gonna go Catholic rebounds. I think this is I don't know the Holtville team like you said you did or like you do. I would say this is probably similar in its physicality, just up a level in terms of them being evenly matched physically. It's really about the second half for the Shamrocks, like you said. Are they going to be able to handle the pressure, the heat, the impact, and can their home crowd kind of push them to that victory? Because we know next week's going to be really tough. So I'll go 28-25 for the Shamrocks. A lot of scoring, maybe not as much as you will predict, or maybe not, maybe a little more than you will predict, but I'm going to go 28-25 Rocks.
Yeah, well, what a game that sounds like it's going to be. I'm really be able to be there, but I'm with you, Mac. I think UIC needs this game more than Hopefield does. I think I have the Rocks win this one, 21-15. A little less scoring. I think both of these defenses are going to be kind of battling this thing out a little bit.
Moving on to our final prediction, the Saturday game, a rare Saturday game. Kingman Academy hosting San Pasqual. San Pasqual, of course, had that 30 to nothing win over St. John Paul II. I think this is another explosive offensive game for the Warriors. And I think it's going to be the big breakout offensive explosion for Kingman Academy as well. I'm going dogfight, air raid, ball over the place, all over the place, whether it's on the ground, in the air, to Isaiah, to Acuna. The
The other team,
defense may be
maybe.
struggling a little bit. I'm gonna go 45-42 Warriors in kind of a wild one.
I agree, man. This vibe and this hype and excitement around Rivas and his team this year, I could tell how excited they are just to know that they have a roster that's more ready to compete than they have been in years past. And that's just the bottom line. They have more guys that have played football. And you could tell it even without Alfred out there, they finally have some just capable players that are able to make some plays. So we're pulling for SP. I think it's gonna be a crazy game too, Mac, just in terms of a lot of offense, little to no defense, almost 35-31. Warriors win it. They advance to 2-1. How about that?
I love it. I love it. So there you go. There you have our predictions for week two. To recap our week one predictions, I believe I went 5-3 with my picks, and I believe you were 4-4. I had Antelope wrong, Cibola wrong, and then I think I got everything else correct. Um, I don't remember what yours were, Sam, but
Yeah, I might have went one different than you, but all in all, pretty 500-ish week, hoping for some better results this week. I think we disagreed on Yuma, Palo Verde. I think that's where
gotcha. Yeah,
we're at.
this one we did, and then I also got YC wrong last week as well.
Okay.
I think you predicted that one as well. So Antelope was wrong, Cibola was wrong, YC was wrong, and then I believe you might have had San Pasqual losing. I think
I
that's
think
what
I
it
might have had
was.
SP losing.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have our predictions for this upcoming week, our power rankings, all sorts of coverage. Be sure to check out everything on our YouTube channel as well. Follow our Instagram at Yuma County HSFB. We'll have schedules, scoreboards. Looking forward to building this pick'em graphic. We're going to have some coaches from former coaches from around the community, as well as myself, Sam, and Morgan Feller, also from KYMA, to get some picks, get some cool graphics for you guys. I'm sure we'll have some highlights all over the place and some photos as well. Looking forward to the opportunity to potentially get some of these quick clips up on the social medias, and really looking forward to next week and another full slate of football, Sam.
Yep, no doubt. And we'll continue to, put this out for everyone. And we want to just, continue to provide that Yuma County football coverage for everyone out there. And we're excited for this season to really, get going here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sam. For Sam, I'm Mac. Thanks for you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.